Folks call Alone in the Wilderness a gourmet show. See how they handle food, smoking the prepared fish on racks. Seeing it makes your mouth water. Boiling it in a pot is another tasty option. If fish isn't your thing, you can try cooking wild boar. Can I still join and get a taste? Alone in the Wilderness started just 10 days ago. Sean had to leave after losing his fire starter. Now, let's check on the others. By day 5, Roland had already started collecting berries. Shaking them in his shoes makes them taste even better. He plans to store all the food he collects in an empty nest, so he can lie down and enjoy berries in winter. He believes he can fill it by picking everything close by. Just the thought makes Roland happy, but to thrive here, he needs to work harder on his shelter. He prefers to walk a bit farther to find the right place. After some searching, Roland stumbled upon this gem. You see a heap of stones, but he sees stone walls. Put some logs on top, and it's the perfect winter shelter. Today's goal is to stack the stones properly. It takes a lot of energy. He was already out of breath after just a little work. I'm really concerned he'll tire out before the house is done. Roland can only move the stones slowly, spending a lot of time and effort to place them correctly. It looks pretty good now, just waiting for the roof to be built. Roland is very determined to complete this challenge. On the 6th day, Mark went to collect firewood and found fresh wolf tracks. He's anxious they might come to the shelter at night. With so much left to do, he hopes they won't appear unexpectedly. He's a retired veteran who often teaches survival skills. He learned many useful tricks in the military, which he thinks will be useful in the Arctic. His greatest asset is his mindset. He can handle any pressure. He's a bit concerned his son might not recognize him when he gets back. Now, let's check on the fishing. Fish are still swimming in the diving area. Mark landed 4 big ones this time. If he keeps this up, he'll have no problems before winter. He's very confident about this challenge, so excited he doesn't know what to say. He thinks he needs a bigger place to smoke the fish, so he's building a stove with stones inside. It's a big project. He had to keep moving and stacking materials, making sure the fire wouldn't set the shelter ablaze. Roasting himself was not an option. After putting in a lot of time and effort, he finally finished it, and it looked pretty good. Doing it in the Arctic daylight was no problem. He quickly lit the fire to test it out. Eating only fish was getting dull. Hunting bigger game would be ideal. Fish pieces were laid on the rack, and you could almost smell them through the screen. He was tempted to rush over for a taste. Next door, Collie was happy. He'd caught a rabbit, which he considered very lucky. He was thrilled to find plenty of mushrooms nearby. He often traveled to different places. He was accustomed to wild living and had endured many tough environments, but the Arctic's severity still surprised him. Collie believed his survival skills were solid and was sure he could last 100 days, though he was a bit concerned about finding food once winter arrived. He aimed to stockpile food early on for a more comfortable stay. The prize money would be a fantastic bonus. He could then spend a long time traveling without worrying about funds, even though this challenge was particularly tough. Yet, he was set on finishing the challenge. For now, he focused on easier prey like squirrels and rabbits. He aimed to scatter traps throughout the area, hoping to spend minimal time checking them daily. With some luck, eating meat every day wouldn't be a dream. Watching him set up traps, it seemed he really wanted to place them every few steps. If rabbits could talk, they'd likely commend his trapping skills. After a long day, he could finally rest. The Arctic conditions were still bearable. He felt a sense of homecoming and knew that, succeed or not, he would return to explore this place again. This spot was ideal for wilderness survival. Suddenly, he saw movement. It was a pack of wolves. Fortunately, they were far off. He just hoped they wouldn't visit at night. Despite his nerves, he was curious to track the wolves and see their destination. However, they vanished after a short walk, so he headed back to the shelter to rest. He felt a kinship with the wolves, sharing their love for big chunks of meat and the thrill of the hunt. If given the chance, he'd love to grill them and see how they taste, but he hoped they wouldn't scare off the rabbits. Let's check on Cole. He's busy hunting squirrels. For him, it's as easy as drinking water. Finally, we have meat for tonight. I'll scout for more edibles nearby. Cole's been an archer for years. He often goes out hunting in the wild. Now, he makes a living by crafting longbows, and he has military experience. He's always kept himself in top shape, both physically and mentally. Surviving 100 days in the Arctic is no easy feat, but that's what makes it tougher. He enjoys testing his limits. Plus, being single helps him focus. It's easier to concentrate on the challenge. If he wins, she wants to travel and explore. After bidding farewell to her family, she quickly arrived in the Arctic for the challenge. Now, she has to clean the squirrel. The Arctic is truly unforgiving. It took her quite some time to adapt. Time flies in wilderness survival. After a bit of cleaning, it's almost dark. Although there's not much meat on it, it will definitely be crispy when roasted. He can't wait to cook and eat it. On the 7th day, Amos had been busy setting up gill nets. For him, life here has been a bit tough. The rocks are so slippery that he feels he might fall into the water at any moment. If not for the gill nets, he would just want to lie in bed and rest. He immediately went to retrieve the nets and caught 3 fish. They are quite large, enough to last him several days. If he could catch big fish every day, he wouldn't mind falling into the water. Amos has always lived in the wild. He knows how to find food and make tools. He often goes to remote places to train. Coming to the Arctic this time is incredibly lucky for him. He can showcase his survival skills to the world. Most importantly, he's great at handling hunger. He might not make it the full 100 days, but he's sure he can last 2.5 months. He aims to construct a sizable shelter and hopes to bag a big hunt. For Amos, being alone makes him miss his family a lot. He might quit the challenge because of this. If he wins the prize, he plans to buy a big house for his family so they can live better. Now, he needs to clean the big fish. He's concerned that the fish might attract bears and wolves, disturbing his sleep. To his surprise, the fish is full of eggs. The fish is full of eggs, which are packed with energy. Tonight, I can enjoy both grilled fish and fish soup. I can also have fish soup. Amos is in a pretty good mood. Suddenly, I saw a wolf appear. I hope it wasn't attracted by the fish. I wanted to save some meat, but I'll have to eat it all tonight. Otherwise, I'll keep stressing about the wolves. You can see it following the tracks. It's way too close to the shelter. I need to be prepared in advance. Nearby, Roland is still working on his shelter. The chimney is nearly finished, so starting a fire here shouldn't be a problem. Everything's going well. Now, I need to gather wood for the roof. Chopping down trees is already exhausting. Thinking about carrying them later, Roland finds it really tough. His shelter should be the best, right? Hauling even one log is exhausting, and I still need 4 or 5 more to stay comfortable this winter. I can't hold back on energy. After a long day, I've just finished the frame. It looks pretty good so far. In a few more days, it should be ready to move in. Would you build a shelter like this? Corey has been at North Creek for 8 days. He wastes a lot of time every day just boiling water, thinking about how he could drink water anytime at home. It's really tough here. The frame of the shelter is actually done, but it still needs a lot of materials. He can only finish a small part each day. There are just too many things to do. Surviving alone in the wild is really stressful. Corey's building speed isn't fast. He's stuffing moss into every gap. Finishing 1 wall a day is good enough. Corey initially aimed for a small shelter, but it ended up being this big. Luckily, the nearby wood is easy to chop and carry. Even so, there are still unexpected issues. His knee feels like it's been hit. He can barely stand up, but it really hurts. Despite this, he insists on carrying the wood back and continues building the shelter. First, he puts the waterproof cloth on top, then weighs it down with spruce branches. He injured his knee in the army and isn't sure if it's acting up now. Although it hurts a bit, he still insists on finishing it. What would normally take a few days, Corey managed to finish in 1 day. He can move in later. Corey is resting in the shelter. Although he knows it's time to build a winter shelter, his body just doesn't want to move. He wonders how the show chose this location. He spent ages looking, but couldn't find a good spot. Finally, he settled for a place by the cliff, even though it's a bit far. But it's still an improvement. Corey pushed through his exhaustion. Flat areas are scarce here. He has to put in a lot of effort on the ground, which tires him out just thinking about it. While adjusting the shelter, he gathers materials. His main worry is the weather. He's unsure if it will get windy and fears waking up to find the top blown away. The wind was tougher than he thought. Corey had a hard time finishing it, and the result looked a bit rough. The wind is only going to get worse. Corey needs to find a way to block it. He spent the entire day working on the shelter. Next door, Mark's shelter is much better. He can even make fish head soup. He's living quite comfortably. Surviving in the wild should be like Mark, eating and drinking well. His fish trap exceeded expectations, providing plenty of fish. The burden of survival eased up. Mark's eager to hunt for meat since eating fish daily will get dull. One section of the shelter still needs finishing, but it's pretty simple. Just lay down 5 logs, put up fences and crossbars outside. Finally, you fill it with spruce branches. It was done in no time, and the quality is quite good. No need to worry about break-ins, it looks solid. Now he can light a fire and relax. These smoked fish will last for weeks. While Mark was daydreaming, he suddenly heard a noise. He didn't stop to figure out the noise. Instead, he braced himself and went out, finding a black bear wandering around. Although it wasn't heading towards the shelter, for safety's sake, Mark had to drive the bear to another area. The fish likely drew the bear in, but with the wind on his side, Mark doesn't need to worry about it catching the scent. However, the bear ran too fast. Mark couldn't find it. After searching carefully, he had to give up. He can't guarantee the shelter's safety with the bear around. He needs to solve this quickly. Mark tried to make some noise to attract it. Can anyone guess what sound he's making? He walked around for a bit, but didn't spot the bear. I hope it doesn't show up tonight. On day 10, Cole gets ready to fish with makeshift wings. After some effort, he finally succeeds. Since arriving, he has shed a lot of weight. His belt holes are insufficient, so he makes new ones. If he stays 100 days, he might need to add several more holes to his belt. For now, he focuses on finding food to slow his weight loss. He wishes he could hunt with a bow and arrow, and a grouse showing up would be ideal. But his knee pain is the biggest issue. His knee pain makes walking difficult, impacting his survival skills. If it doesn't improve soon, he might seriously need to think about leaving. Feeling down, he put all his hopes on the wings. He hopes to catch some fish. The knee problem is worse than he imagined, and he can't even lift the wings properly. He almost fell into the water, but managed to catch a fish, which slightly improved his mood. The fish was large enough to feed him for a day. He quickly brought it back to his shelter, processed it, and put it straight into the pot to stew. In a short time, it was cooked. Although he didn't add any seasoning, he felt it tasted great. He prefers it this way, unseasoned and natural. On day 11, Coley noticed the wind was too strong. His shelter could collapse at any moment, so he had no choice but to move to another place. Coley spent 2 days finding a spot and 3 days building it. Now he has to move again, which consumes a lot of energy. Had he known this would happen, he wouldn't have built it. The nearby ground is poor. Must he go even further? Coley wrestled with this choice for a while but opted to find food first. The rocks are very steep. One wrong step could break his leg. Then, he spotted something in a crevice and quickly used his bow and arrow. No one expected it to be a porcupine. Coley was overjoyed and quickly shot a few more arrows. The porcupine lay there, giving up the struggle. Coley immediately went in to grab it. It wasn't very big, but he was quite satisfied to have some meat. He said he didn't like hunting, but his hands didn't shake at all when shooting. He quickly cleaned the porcupine. Coley didn't waste any fat, putting it all into the pot. He threw the inedible parts far away, not wanting to attract bears. He aimed to make a hat or something warm from the fur. The day's catch was decent, but the shelter was a hassle. Coley's knee was worsening, making walking difficult. He feared an old injury was acting up. You could clearly see a lump, and even the slightest movement caused severe pain. Coley knew he couldn't continue. No matter how sturdy his shelter or plentiful his food, his knee wouldn't heal. Worse yet, he had a slight fever. He couldn't sleep all night, and by dawn, things had gotten worse. Unfortunately, he had no choice but to quit the challenge. Had his knee not been injured, he believed he could have finished the challenge. The show's crew soon arrived to take Coley to the hospital. They hadn't anticipated this and had already set up for Coley to be examined at the hospital. Hopefully, his knee will improve. Now, just 8 contestants remain. Who do you think will finish the 100-day challenge?